Good morning. um, Sorry about the lighting and, I'm not doing anything special. um, but this is mainly for you to listen to anyway. There's a couple things that I'm going to show you, but they're on my other camera, which is right here. Okay, well, let me figure out what to do with that real quick. Because when I add that, oh, I know what. Duh. There we go. Okay, let's try that again. I shut the mic off. Oh, yes. See, there we go. That is much better. Okay, so the reason I have this up is I wanted to talk about some stuff this morning. Maybe reposition this just a little bit better. Yeah. I wonder. Let me try something here real quick. Bear with me. Okay. And now. Oh, there we go. See, now we got a better view. Okay. Stay. All right. Okay. Okay. Let me get into this. Okay. So I was thinking about some stuff today. First off, you know how, like, when we don't normally see something, until we're talking about it, you know what I mean? Like, we don't notice things until it's brought to our attention. One of the things, but doesn't mean that it didn't exist or it wasn't there. It's just that we didn't focus on it because we weren't thinking about it. For example, when I first bought my Saturn, I thought, oh my gosh, this is such a beautiful car. And I don't think I've ever seen anybody drive something like this. If it was, if I did, it was rare. And then I bought the Saturn, and then all of a sudden I saw Saturns everywhere. You know what I mean? Same with my, I drive a Kia Sorento now, and now I see them everywhere. So what I'm getting at is the term neurodivergent was brought to my attention probably about a year ago. My daughter is a third-year student of psychology. So she's in her fourth year, but she still has this whole school year. Anyways, when she would learn something that she could apply to the family, because we were like her study cases, she would talk to me about it. She does talk to me about it. And so I first heard the term neurodivergent from her. And I have, been familiarizing myself with a lot of different terms in psychology for myself because I am also a license exempt childcare provider. And with that being said, license exempt, that doesn't mean that I don't have to take classes, because I do. There's a level 1 and a level 2 in my state. And I take the level 2 because I had to quit my day job to become a license exempt childcare provider, so that I would have the time to watch my grandbabies. And I originally started doing that because of my granddaughter was showing signs of she wasn't going to talk, and she was behind on a lot of things, her developing her motor skills, and just she was developing slower. And so my oldest daughter, her mommy, wonderful that she did this, reached out and got the help that she needed to help get Lennox diagnosed because, she was 2 and not speaking any words. So for like a year, not even quite a year, we had this great program that Michaela was working with called Early On, and they would come to the home. And so she was getting assessed there, and she was also getting assessed at a couple other places here in our hometown here. And so by the age of 3, she was actually diagnosed with autism, and they go by levels, and she was just a couple points under the highest level of autism that a child can have. So she's going to be 4 actually in a couple days. So we have had this diagnosis for a year, and I just, like a whole new world opened up for me because, Lennox might be a toddler, but Lennox is a toddler. But it's like she's still, everything that she is beautiful, and it's to me, I don't think it's just me being her grandmother. It's the fact that despite some of the labels that get put on autism, and because she's considered special needs, she's this brilliant little child. You know what I mean? I am amazed at the things that she is able to do, and I'm amazed at all the grandchildren. I'm very proud of them and how intelligent they are. But Lennox is a little bit different. You know what I mean? And so anyway, it's like it's hard to put into words exactly what I'm trying to say. I know because of this, of what Lennox has been diagnosed with, it's kind of like that thing I was talking about in the beginning. It's like you don't notice things until they're brought to your attention. So when you look back, I look at my own children, and then actually from talking to my mom, how I was, you can see some of these same traits and I see them in my children. And my mom compared me to how Lennox was developing in the early times. And it doesn't mean that I was right on track, except for I was extremely shy and I didn't talk very much. So, it's like there were certain signs there. And autism is a spectrum. Now, my father was, I think in the beginning, just schizophrenic, but he ended up, before he passed in his late years, he was psychotic, paranoid schizophrenic. And, he didn't get the help that he needed, I think, it led him down a dark path with mental health. Whereas when you catch it early, because again, I think it starts out as one thing and it can become something bigger, or enveloping more of that spectrum if it's not nurtured, because these can be gifts too. There's struggles in one area, gifts in another, but it all stems to like what I am, like the whole topic of this is like the difference between a neurodivergent brain and a neurotypical. And neurodivergent is just different than neurotypical. And it doesn't make either one bad. It doesn't make the neurotypical better than the neurodivergent. They're just different. And so, I don't ever want my granddaughter Lennox to think for 1 minute that she is less than someone else because her brain is different. And because I see her and I just see how beautiful and, she's funny and she can be a little uh, shit sometimes, because she is extremely smart. Um, she's learned how to manipulate mommy and grandma with, her sweetness. Anyway, she's still very intelligent. And so we are learning how to teach her, you know. So, and in order to do that, like for myself, um, I've been taking classes for the childcare, and since she is autistic, I lean more towards that. And just to show you some of the classes that I've been taking, um, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to pull up this other camera here. I started in 2021, and like this is it starts out with like orientation, but it's for all children. And then you have like a ongoing health and safety training refresher every year. But you get credit hours for each of these. And like I have like 29 classes that I have completed thus far. And the credits themselves are, you know what I mean? Like some were 2 hours, some were one. So they're just considered credit hours. So I have quite a few that these are all classes that are presented from the state of Michigan. And these are all accredited college courses. So they are, and some of these trainers have been amazing. I was actually a part of a grant that took place here in Michigan. It's over now. I think they're going to renew it though, but it was for the education of our youth, or education for us childcare providers for the youth. And it was really based around research that is helping children grow, you know what I mean, emotionally, because when they are emotionally stable, then they learn better. It's easier for them to learn. And that really covers a big, again, there's a whole spectrum of possibilities that can inhibit a child's ability to learn. And a lot of it is stemmed around their home life. And I know that I like so much that I have learned about Lennox and just, the classes that I've had to take to help me, take care of children has taught me about us as adults. Like if we'd had this type of, education, and I'm sure it was there, but this is also based upon, newer research also. So it's like if we knew all these things when we were children or had somebody guiding us with this type of research and the benefit of this type of training, adults taking this training to help guide their children. And I think it does start in the home. It's not just teachers and child caregivers. It starts in the home. Then it keeps us as adults struggling less to deal with everyday life. And also, it helps you to recognize behavior that, like, we just think might be normal and not think anything about it. Because I did with myself and my children. It's like I can see, because of what I have learned about Lennox, I can see that in us. So when Taylor brought that term to me, she was like, "And mom, everybody in this family is neurodivergent." And of course, she had us taking like the RADS test, and she was very excited in this new field, so she was sharing a lot. But I mean, it was a whole pivotal turning point for me. And it is because of the things that I was finding out about myself and my family, that it takes the not because I've never been one that really liked labels, but I can go back and say I was wrong about a lot of things. And it's because I'm progressive and I'm willing to change my thought process when it comes to extremely important things like mental health. I don't want to box myself in. And so having a label, I think now gives you acceptance as like, oh, I have these struggles, where before it was like, why am I not living up to these things? Why can't I just do this? What is wrong with me? Well, then you get a label and it's like, oh, okay, well, it's only natural that I'm going to struggle. So I forgive myself. Why I didn't like labels before was because I felt like people would like use those labels as an excuse to be a certain way. I think it just means, you're going to have more strengths in one area and you're going to have weaknesses in another. So, even a neurotypical brain is not going to be able to do the same things that a neurodivergent brain would do. So, it doesn't make it less than, it just makes it different. So, I know I have rambled a lot, and I hope I'm making some sense, but part of my neurodivergency is my brain is going very quickly about these topics in my head, and my words are not coming out and matching that. And I used to say, "Oh, I'm just a bad communicator." No. After watching, and talking more about what actual bad communication is, I just struggle in the area of uh, the words coming out as fast as my brain is processing them. And that is because of the um, neurodivergency. So, like a neurotypical brain, that would be something that the thoughts they would come out, and it's not just like even normal has its, what is normal? You know what I mean? If we're comparing brains, what is normal? I think we're going to see more neurodivergency because, again, it has been brought to our attention. It's a fairly new term. But again, when you're given that label, well, then it's like you can actually go and get help. Without the label, you can't. So it's like we had to wait for Lennox to be diagnosed for her to get any actual type of treatment. And you can't, don't get me wrong, you cannot cure autism. Treatment or therapy is a better word, to help her I hate to say it because it sounds exhausting, is fit in. It's to be able to do these everyday things. And it breaks my heart knowing that it's going to be harder for her. But there's something called ABA therapy that is going to help her. Again, she's only 4. So, and she's been in a special school. This is her second year. And it's a wonderful school. It's a special needs school. And I had asked one of her teachers, I'm like, how long can these kids go here? And she was like, they can go here till they're 26 if they need to. And I was just like, I'm so grateful because the whole school is just special needs. They don't have other kids in public school going to this school. The thing of it is that school only teaches the knowledge that they receive there is not all the way through the 12th grade. So it's like elementary teaching. So in order for that to progress, she would at this point would have to be part of a public school. That might change, and I am hoping that that will change. Again, things like the school that she is going to is also fairly new. So I don't have the statistics in front of me to quote what they are, but we are seeing more neurodivergency in our youth than maybe because they're getting a label, like, again, my children weren't diagnosed with those kind of things. But they were like my daughter was diagnosed with ADHD and depression. And then, something happened to her as a young girl, little girl, that she had PTSD from. So, I mean, she had those type of labels, but the signs were there, if you know what I mean. The signs were there, but I always thought autism was like the Rain Man. You know what I mean? So my daughter didn't have any of those signs. And even my oldest daughter, she showed signs like what I'm finding out are also a part of autism. But again, I was associating autism with like Rain Man, and neither of them had anything like that. Lennox did and does. So that was the high level of autism that we noticed that actually put us on the journey of, oh my goodness. Okay, so again, like I said, it is a spectrum. Autism is a spectrum. So neurodivergent is like the biggest spectrum. You know what I mean? It's like, all these other things that we get labeled on fall under that umbrella. So because of that, in the research, all these things are still fairly new that we are learning, but we are progressively learning that if the majority of society has this type of brain processing, way of thinking, then we better get on board and work with it, right? And so this might be new information for you too. So we can talk about mental health and we can talk about how to communicate with each other, but I think we really need to address the elephant in the room is that not all brains process the same way. So a neurodivergent person is going to have different struggles in different areas, where a neurotypical will understand, you know what I mean? Like when we talk about communication and, it's they're a neurotypical brain, something that we have always. So it's like when we talk about these things, the neurotypical's going, yeah, okay. The neurodivergent is not always going to be able to do those things without more of a struggle. And then there might be things that are no big deal to them. So why don't we just get into what the differences are? So I found a couple different sites, and the Cleveland Clinic is a pretty good one. So there's like a whole bunch. You can look it up, So, okay, let's go. So overview, neurodivergent is a non-medical term that describes people whose brains develop or work differently for some reason. This means that person has different strengths and struggles from people whose brains develop or work more typically, while some people who are neurodivergent have medical conditions It also happens to people where a medical condition or diagnosis hasn't been identified. Yeah, like I said, this is all in process. Everything is still being researched when it comes to these two different types of, like, what are they? It's the antennas off of our brain. It's the receptors. A neurodivergent receptor in the brain looks like almost like a frayed hair follicle. And a neurotypical's receptor might have a few branches, where the neurodivergent has many. So the neurodivergent is taking in so much more information all at one time, where a neurotypical is not taking as much. So what does it mean when a person is neurodivergent? The term neurodivergent describes people whose brain differences affect how their brain works. That means they have different strengths and challenges from people whose brains don't have those differences. I know it's kind of matter of fact, but the possible differences include medical disorders, learning disabilities, and other conditions. The possible strengths include better memory, being able to mentally picture three-dimensional, 3D objects easily, the ability to solve complex mathematical calculations in their head, and many more. Now, I want to stop right there because I'm going to tell you, this is something I also found out too. And a couple people on YouTube have actually talked about it, is that, imagination. Okay, so think about, all your artists and stuff. Like, I can ask my youngest daughter, who is in psychology, to picture an apple. And I can see it in my mind's eye. I can actually have the apple sitting in my hand, and I can see the texture of the skin. Is it shiny? Does it have some little rough spots? Either way, I can even take a bite of it and like hear the crunch and taste it. She can't even imagine the apple. So it doesn't mean that I'm neurodivergent. It just means that some people can't imagine that. And to me, I think, oh my gosh, I've been able to do that my whole life. I'm thinking the first time I heard it, I was like, wow, I wonder, is there something wrong with Taylor? But no, that's actually a neurotypical way of thinking. So it's neurodivergent to actually have that intense of an imagination. You know what I mean? Where you can actually, okay. So my mind is automatically like theorizing all sorts of things just from that. But that is something that we just didn't know until like recent years. Okay. So neurodivergent isn't a medical term. Instead, it's a way to describe people using words other than normal and abnormal. That's important because there's no single definition of normal for how the human brain works. Just like, I don't know. It's amazing, because if I think about, being able to imagine like that, I think that's like almost like a telepathic type thing. Imagine if we could, show each other visuals in our head. There wouldn't be anything getting lost in translation, if you know what I'm saying, because words are spelling, right? So, I mean, people know me and where my brain goes. So, oh shoot, I'm getting a call. All right, I guess we're going to end this here, but that's all right. All right, so where were we? Because yeah, like I said, I don't have an actual diagnosis even for myself, but trust that my daughter was onto something with thinking that we're all neurodivergent. So, I was talking about the imagination thing. So I think that kind of goes back to like telepathy. And I think that, this is a little bit off point, but I'm just describing to you where my brain went when I'm learning about the whole imagination thing. I think it's part of telepathy. And I think birds use it in how they communicate. You know what I mean? Like, able to do what they do. They are actually communicating, talking in a telepathic type way, whatever that is for a bird. So I think of our ancestors before language was a thing. I feel like it was similar. And I think that, neurodivergent is not an accident. I think that some of us had it and had it all along. You know what I mean? So I think that, like, a person that is receiving information from the universe or from their environment, if it's more than they can actually process, again, a neurodivergent, and again, you think about what the receptor looks like, the antenna is like majorly picking up stuff. You know what I mean? I think that a lot of people who are psychic or, the clairs, they're picking up more information because they are neurodivergent. So they're going to have their strengths in those type of areas because they're extremely sensitive to the information that's coming in, where a neurotypical doesn't receive the information in the same way. And I just think again, I'm glad that this article says there's no such thing as normal, really. So you're just comparing the differences. So moving on. Again, I don't even know if I said what I meant to say, but let's go. It says the word for people who aren't neurodivergent is neurotypical. And that means their strengths and challenges aren't affected by any kind of difference that changes how their brains work, which is why I think it's important to know these things when we are talking about mental health. Why does this term exist? The term neurodivergent came from the related term neurodiversity. Judy Singer, an Australian sociologist, coined the word neurodiversity in 1998 to recognize that everyone's brain develops in a unique way. Like a person's fingerprints, no two brains, not even those of identical twins, are exactly the same. Because of that, there's no definition of normal capabilities for the human brain. Yeah, absolutely. So even when we define things like how we communicate, emotional intelligence, a neurodivergent brain may struggle more than a neurotypical in ways of communication. Let's read on. The term neurodivergent came from the related term. Oh, sorry. There I am rereading. For most areas of modern medicine, defining what's normal is critical. In many circumstances, healthcare providers determine a person's health based on the yes or no question, is this normal? Depending on the answer, a person is either sick or well based on symptoms they do or don't have, or things they can or can't do. An example of this in everyday life would be comparing the following two people with a special talent for drawing. Person number one, a 12-year-old child with autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, who struggles in social situations. The child's main ASD-related issues are social problems, unusually high interest in drawing, and being strictly dependent on a daily routine. The child is naturally better at drawing without taking classes or accumulating experience. Person number two, a 40-year-old neurotypical adult. The adult learned to draw at the age of 17, and their talent took hard work and time to develop. They're very social and make friends easily. Okay. I know that a lot of you can probably relate to this. Myself, I was very artistic as a child, but my social skills were lacking. I was very shy. I've always been interested in music. And my mom found out early on that I could sing. And so she pushed me to do that. And it took a long time to get over the fear of getting up on that stage. Now, granted, I got up on the stage, and from the age of 14 on, that's what I did, outside of routine. I was a musician. I still am a musician, but I was a performing musician. And you can ask any past bandmate. The performance part was not a struggle for me as far as actually performing musically. Talking to the crowd and socializing was a struggle. And for 3 days sometimes more after a show, I just couldn't, it was hard to function because I was just so overwhelmed. I mean, literally just overwhelmed with that whole interaction. And I used to think it's just they're taking my energy, but no, it's because I've always been awkward. But there's a part of me that says, yeah, whatever. I'm not letting that, I struggle, but that's not going to stop me. You know what I mean? I'm still, I guess I'm a fighter, I'm going to fight through that stuff, Whereas, someone else might not have that same talent, but it's easy for them to socialize. So, I mean, it doesn't make one less than the other. It just makes them different. That's not even like the neurotypical adult. And that's actually, I think, a minority. Could still not have the singing talent or not have the artistic talent. They could have, they could still be great and make friends easily. I just tend to think that a neurodivergent person might have, typically in my own studies and my own experience with neurodivergent individuals, I see that it is a struggle socially. So reading more, it says, no one would consider the adult abnormal or defective because they can't paint as well as the child. Likewise, autism spectrum disorder is a condition that can take many different forms, many of which happen in people who don't have ASD. Describing the child as neurodivergent acknowledges that they're differently abled. Neurodiversity means it's natural for both the adult and the child to develop differently and have their own abilities and struggles. Is being neurodivergent a disability? Some neurodivergent people struggle because of systems or processes that don't give them a chance to show off their strengths, or that create new or more intense challenges for them. I concur as somebody who has experienced this. I'm not diagnosed, but I feel everything that is said about neurodivergency from the time I can remember. So it's like I push through what I struggle with. I push through it, but it does take a toll. You guys know my good friend, extremely wonderful woman, and highly sensitive tarot, Julia. She talks about getting diagnosed at 50 for autism. And I would definitely suggest, this is a shout out, to go check out her channel, because I mean, if you know her, then you know what her struggles are. You know what she does struggle with. She's very honest about it. But then you can see all the things she's gifted in also. So it's like, you look at her and you think, oh my gosh, this woman has it going on. But then we don't know her struggles, because she is only showing you her strengths. She's honest about her struggles and she talks about them, but you see her strengths. And because she's so honest and she's so authentic, you know, we are, as a whole in this community, I think the majority of us are neurodivergent. Compassion we have because we understand, you know, and it is that compassion that leads us to being able to understand. And I think it comes from relating. You know, we are all relating. Example one is being neurodivergent, a disability. Many people who are neurodivergent struggle in social situations, which can make it hard to find work because they struggle doing job interviews. However, they can still get the job if the hiring process emphasizes their abilities, such as screening potential hires with a skills test. Once on the job, their attention to detail means they're an outstanding accountant or record keeper because they can easily process data that others might find more tedious. Example two, some who are neurodivergent struggle in noisy environments or situations. That means a busy office can feel overwhelming to them. However, a pair of noise canceling headphones might give them the quiet they need to make them the most productive person on their team because of their strengths. Because one of their strengths is the ability to focus on their work intensely. I concur there. Neurodivergent people also have to mask, or they feel they have to mask to fit in. And so that is a task in itself. It's extremely exhausting. And like my granddaughter is doing ABA, or she hasn't started it yet, but she is on a waiting list for ABA therapy, and it's extremely strenuous, but it is so that she can fit in. And we know that it is going to take a toll, you know, and I mean, it's just, it's too bad we couldn't all just be neurodivergent together. You know what I mean? But because of where we've been in the past and where we are now, we're still learning so much more about being neurodivergent, that everything has been created from this neurotypical viewpoint. You know, it's like the infrastructure is created for neurotypical. You know what I mean? Like in my work that I did before becoming a childcare provider, I worked in a factory, and I applied graphics and I sealed. And routine, for one, is something that I have to have in everything. I have to have organization. And some would say, oh, that's the Virgo in you. Well, turns out it's probably more a neurotypical or neurodivergent thing than it is neurotypical or Virgo thing. Because I have to have routine. That routine, I get it done. Something happens to throw me off my routine, I'm like, oh goodness, I'm done for the day. Being in a crowded room and noise, I have learned to mask through that. I've learned to deal. So I understand, you know, paying attention to detail, but like I would have to work by myself in order to get all that done. So, I mean, I can understand what they are talking about because I can apply it to myself. It makes absolute sense because I can apply it to myself. It's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So when I say most neurodivergent people might have awkward social skills, I'm speaking from experience. It's the truth, you know. I know, like Julia said, oh, you have all this Leo energy. You know, my ascendant is Leo. And I know I do, and I come off that way, but you don't see the struggles behind the camera. You know, people that know me, they know how awkward I am. And like I said, I think you kind of get an idea because you hear the broken words, like I'll skip over words. So I know you kind of see that. And the more authentic I become, you're going to see it more, because I am not going to feel ashamed for having these things. And in a perfect world, to me, would be not having to have like ABA therapy for my granddaughter to fit in, because we're living in a neurotypical world. Because in all honesty, I think it's more neurodivergent than it's ever been. So I'm not sure if this is helping, but I think it's more of a just to bring awareness to the whole topic of emotional intelligence, communicating with each other. When we talk about not knowing what another person's struggle is and how we treat them, that is a fact. That is a fact. And a neurodivergent person, like my granddaughter, does this. If you start talking too loud, she does this. A neurodivergent person's brain just might shut down, or they might start screaming because they can't handle it. And so they are going to react because they haven't learned how to do anything other than. It doesn't mean that they don't understand that they need to be better, but the struggle to be better, they're not just working through a neurotypical response to somebody hollering at them, or anger, or where they feel threatened. They are also reacting from a neurodivergent place. So there's so much more to unpack when it comes to this subject. So I just wanted to add that in there, and bring awareness to the community. Reading on a little bit more, in both examples, when we just talked about example 1 and number 2 with attention to detail, and or a noisy environment. In both examples, accommodations help the person overcome their particular struggle. For someone with a disability, an accommodation is a way to accept that they're different or have challenges, and then give them a tool or a way to succeed. For the people who are neurodivergent in the examples above, the accommodations were the hiring process and the headphones. Accommodations for people with disabilities isn't a new idea. Some examples include physical disabilities like ramps and entrances with automatic doors for those in wheelchairs. Sensory disabilities are crosswalks with a loud tone for those who have vision problems to let them know it's safe to cross the street. Why use the term neurodivergent to describe people? Some people oppose the idea of neurodiversity as being about difference instead of deficits. Absolutely. Many who take that stance say they're against it because some who are neurodivergent have true medical conditions that need treatment. However, research shows that knowing about the idea of neurodiversity doesn't mean people who are neurodivergent ignore or deny that they have struggles. Instead, the research shows people who know about the idea of being neurodivergent use that knowledge to adapt and help them succeed. Experts' research also shows words and language related to neurodiversity make a difference in how people live. People who are neurodivergent and learn that it means they're different, not sick or defective, are more likely to be happier and aim higher in their careers. It honestly makes me want to cry. Because knowing that, because I was extremely secretive about struggling to talk to people, and I'm sure I'm not alone. And I used to think there was something wrong with me. And that's the whole thing people do. They think, well, there's something wrong with me. and you don't have, especially if you don't have a diagnosis for it, you just know sometimes it's hard. And when we think about terms like people pleasing, when a child who is neurodivergent then suffers a trauma, so the people pleasing comes out not just as like it's a coping skill. Okay, it's coping, it's masking. So I had a beautiful friend, again, I said her name, Julia, who talked to me about that. And I was just like, oh my gosh, people don't know who I truly am because I'm people pleasing. Well, I wasn't just people pleasing because of the trauma. It was also a part of the neurodivergency. You know what I mean? It's my brain didn't process the trauma to begin with as like a neurotypical. And then we don't know if trauma causes neurodiversity. We don't know that either. So these are all things that we are finding out. The brain, again, is just different in each one of us. So I think, I don't know why that happened. That was weird. I think maybe maybe looking for possible symptoms of what neurodivergency is. I think like right now we can establish that they struggle more with social cues, even imagining. So it's like your artists are probably like people that are creating things from their mind might be neurodivergent. Let's just read on. Let's see, because I'm not speaking factually. I'm speaking from hearsay. So, where are we? Experts research also shows words and language related to neurodiversity. Okay, I did read that. An example of this is someone who has dyslexia. That's a good one. People with that condition struggle to read because their brain doesn't process written language like the brain of someone with dyslexia. Oh, without dyslexia. Jeez. Sorry. However, people with dyslexia usually have brains that are better at processing or mentally picturing 3D objects. I don't have dyslexia. But I mean, that's an interesting fact. That makes them much faster at identifying optical illusions. Ooh. And they have a natural talent for jobs like graphic design and arts, engineering, and more. Ooh. Ooh, okay. Possible causes. Here we go. I guess I should have read further. What are the symptoms of being neurodivergent? Neurodivergent isn't a medical term, condition, or diagnosis. Ooh. People who are neurodivergent have differences in the way their brain works. This is still true even for people with the same medical diagnosis. That means people with very different signs and symptoms can still have the same diagnosis. What conditions can a neurodivergent person have? People who identify themselves as neurodivergent typically have one or more of the conditions or disorders listed below. However, since there aren't any medical criteria or definitions of what it means to be neurodivergent, other conditions also can fall under this term as well. People with these conditions may also choose not to identify themselves as neurodivergent. Some of the conditions that are most common among those who describe themselves as neurodivergent include autistic spectrum disorder. This includes what was once known as Asperger's syndrome, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, DiGeorge syndrome, Down syndrome, dyscalculia, that's a difficulty with math. Dysgraphia, difficulty with writing, dyslexia, difficulty with reading, dyspraxia, difficulty with coordination, intellectual disabilities, mental health conditions like bipolar disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and more. Wow. Prader-Willi syndrome, sensory processing disorders. That I definitely, I think a lot of us can relate to that. Like my keychain when I'm driving cannot touch my leg. It bothers me so bad. I have to like lift it up or something. Anyway, yeah, it's beyond the point. Social anxiety, a specific type of anxiety disorder, Tourette syndrome, Williams syndrome. So, how can I find out if I'm neurodivergent or if my child is neurodivergent? The first step to finding out if you or someone you care for are neurodivergent is to talk to your healthcare provider. They can refer you to a specialist or other providers who can determine if you have a medical disorder, condition, or other brain related difference that might explain why your brain works differently. I agree with that because we're actually my middle daughter now is in the process, and I am going to do it for myself too. I just think that whatever research is out there, and I believe that like there's so much that I didn't know, and it's because I just didn't look. Once you start to look, you will find the research that's out there, and it is very valuable. Is it possible to prevent, treat, or cure being neurodivergent? Neurodiversity refers to the unique way that each person's brain develops. That means it's not preventable, treatable, or curable. So there's no making anybody feel bad. And I think we are headed towards a world that we don't have to feel bad about these things, and we shouldn't. Some of the conditions that cause a person to be neurodivergent are manageable. If a specialist or other healthcare provider diagnoses you or someone you care for with a condition like those mentioned above, they can also talk to you about resources for people with that condition. There's a wide range of possible management options, therapy programs, and more. For some people, such as those with ADHD, behavioral therapy and medication can positively affect the quality of their life. I don't believe in medication for that, but that's me. For others, therapy programs can help you play to your strengths, meaning they show you how to make the most out of your abilities. They can also show you how to adapt to your challenges, minimizing their interference in your life. Now, when I say I don't believe in medication, it's because the medication that I know about thus far, I don't believe in. There might be something else, you know. I just know that Faith was diagnosed with ADHD, and I didn't like the way the medication made her feel. She didn't like it. So, I mean, and I have heard the same from other, it just, I don't know. The research is not enough. And I think that we can, like, I know I mask a lot. I'm not saying that I'm not saying you have to mask, because again, I think we're moving towards a world where you won't have to, but you can do it, and there are ways to do it. It's extremely exhausting, and it doesn't just take your physical energy. It takes, it ends up taking the physical energy. You know what I mean? So it's like, and that once you're depleted of that, then you can get sick, physically sick. Can people who are neurodivergent be successful? Yes, many people who are neurodivergent are accomplished and successful. More and more people who are neurodivergent are talking about their experiences. Some examples of famous and successful people who are neurodivergent include animal scientist and author Temple Grandin, Oscar-winning actor Sir Anthony Hopkins, musician and singer Florence Welch, Olympic gold medalist Simone Biles, climate activist Greta Thunberg. Experts are also believe several accomplished historical figures were neurodivergent based on evidence from their lives. Those include Nobel Prize winning physicist and chemist Marie Curie, Nobel Prize winning theoretical physicist Albert Einstein, artist Vincent van Gogh, inventor and engineer Nikola Tesla, author F. Scott Fitzgerald. Yeah. Business leaders also have a growing understanding of a value of being neurodivergent. In 2017, the magazine Harvard Business Review published Neurodiversity as a Competitive Advantage. The article details the benefits of hiring people who are neurodivergent and why more businesses are doing so. That same article noted that several major national and international corporations have hiring processes that can accommodate people who are neurodivergent. Those corporations include some of the largest names in information technology, the automotive industry, the banking sector, and more. So, where can I learn more about what it means to be neurodivergent? People who are neurodivergent often excel at communicating in online spaces. That's because we have time to think about what we're going to say, and we can re-say it. And I've told you about my video library. I have to go through and edit a whole bunch of stuff if I ever wanted to see the light of day. And then a lot of it is just video journaling. So it's like, it's not going to see the light of day, which is good for me. I critique myself more than anyone else could. So just putting that out there. That's because nonverbal communication, such as eye contact, facial expressions, and body language, doesn't have to be a part of online interaction. Experts often compare computers and other digital devices to prosthetics for those with difficulties in social communication. There are several online spaces where groups of people who are neurodivergent gather, exchange information, discuss their experiences and struggles, and offer advice and resources to each other. Some of the most popular spaces are in plain sight, with neurodivergent communities, groups, and information sharing on some of the most popular websites and social media platforms. Yeah, we're going to come to a day when we don't have to mask anymore. What are some things I can do to support someone who is neurodivergent? There are many things people can do to be supportive of neurodivergent individuals. Some of the most important things you should keep in mind include 1, listen. People who are neurodivergent may feel misunderstood or left out. Be willing to listen to them. Let them know you hear them and respect them and their choices. I could cry because yes, and yes. Yes. I know that because I crave that myself, I try to do that for everyone else. It is a projection. And it's a painful thing. And yeah, I don't have to say any more about that because I think we all know and we've done it. Communicate in ways that help them. Sometimes people who are neurodivergent prefer written communication, such as instant messaging, texting, or emails over a phone call. Yes, and yes, or face-to-face conversation. Give the time and tools they need to communicate. Yeah, yes. I don't know how many times I have heard, why don't you answer your phone? I mean, if it's the kids, right away. If it's my mom, right away. But I can't do that for everybody, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people relate to that. Avoid value-based labels. Experts recommend against using the terms high functioning and low functioning to describe conditions like autism. Yes, I learned that in the very beginning with actually before Lennox was diagnosed, because my daughter Taylor, her friend Danny is autistic, and she's I guess you just wouldn't know it. And to me, the way she acted to me was normal because I think I'm normal. You know what I mean? But anyway, and that was one of the things that I was saying. I was like, oh, high functioning, man, she's so good at this. And Taylor was like, Mama, stop it. I was like, what? I don't understand. I'm giving her a compliment. No, Mom, that's not a compliment. Okay, I understand now. I didn't then, but I do now. And that's what it's all about, right? That's what it's all about, is understanding. And in order to understand, we got to have information to understand, and it's all right in front of us. It's all available. We just got to look for it. So they often assume a person's level of function based on how much they behave like someone who's neurotypical. No two neurodivergent people are the same. The personalities and preferences of neurodivergent people can be widely different, even when they have the same underlying condition. Yeah. Don't assume that anyone is incapable or unintelligent. People who are neurodivergent often have conditions or preferences that make them stand out or appear different. Treat everyone with respect. You can normalize and provide others with accommodations in a way that honors their human dignity. Now, I know that some of the talks that are coming up on Ange and Rain's Beyond the Veil are also about seeking validation. And I can honestly tell you that a lot of behavior that we might think is seeking validation is somebody just crying to be seen. And a lot of it is this community that we are seeing coming alive is a community of neurodivergent people. And there are a lot of them in this community where you're watching this video right now. And I can tell you from my own experience that if you're seeking validation, it is a cry to be seen, not because you want, ooh, look at me, look at me. No, it's like you just want compassion and understanding. That's it. That's it. I think that intentions can be read. If somebody wants to hurt you, or they're feeling hurt, one or the other. I think that you can feel that in with the way that they are presenting themselves, neurodivergent or not. I think the intentions can be felt. And a neurodivergent person is definitely going to feel someone's intentions. Like, I pay attention to Lennox and how she is around people, because I think that she's super sensitive. I think she picks up on that. And I know that I do, and call it intuition or whatever. It's that, again, I can't help but think that people that are neurodivergent their intuition is going to be extremely on fire, because they're picking up more information from the universe all at once. Whereas maybe a neurotypical, it's more filtered, or it's at a easier speed, maybe. Who knows? I am just, talking while I'm thinking, theorizing. So anyway, I forgot what I was saying there. But anyway, yeah, picking up about people. So I think that not everything is as basic as research has shown, because again, we have to, when we take into consideration these levels of communication, someone who has trouble socializing, period, is going to struggle more than a neurotypical person in that area. So when we talk about how we communicate and the 4 different kinds of communication, or emotional intelligence, or even seeking validation, or all the even the bad terms like narcissism and all that, how a neurodivergent person appears is not, you're not going to just go, oh, they're neurodivergent, because they could be masking also. And so I just wanted to put it out there, make you aware, or hope that it helps you become aware. And just for the people that are neurodivergent, I see you. And I love you. And I care. And I'm sorry for any struggles that you've had, because I understand them. And I am so sorry if you felt misunderstood, because I've been there too. And I want to understand more. I want to understand more, because I don't want my granddaughter to grow up in a world where she's misunderstood. I don't want my grandchildren in general. I don't want my daughters. I don't want you, anyone, to feel misunderstood. So let's just be aware, and let's not judge each other, because we just don't know. We just don't know. And take all information for yourself. Any information that's out there, apply it to yourself, not to critique other people or to think, oh, you're talking about, I know. No, use it for yourself. Use it for your own interactions. Apply it to yourself. And I think that's all we can do. And I have rambled long enough. Oops. Not without saying goodbye. And thank you for everyone who comes to my channel and does support me. I appreciate you more than you know. And I hope everyone has a blessed day.